Sebastian, tell them what they're watching. Yeah!
Hi everyone, Sage Man here, founder, emperor, and sole investor of TAPAS and Stuff Productions. Welcome to season 2 of the now fully visual TAPAS podcast. I guess if it's visual now, it's more of a vlog than a podcast. Well, some of it will still be like season 1, and it won't be fully visual. Some of it will be the voiceover with the little visual aids. Anyway, welcome back to TAPAS. Be sure when you're done here to check out our website for information about what we do. Donate to us on Patreon and keep track of us everywhere else that you'll find at the end of this video and below in the video description. So, what are we doing in season 2 of the podcast? A surprisingly different array of stuff than we did in the first season. One of the segments of the podcast used to be watching Disney films for the purpose of gathering information for Keys and Kingdoms, a shared fantasy universe of my creation, which I wanted to make as Disney-esque as possible. It's been a big production. It quickly ended up dominating the podcast, taking up a good 2/3 of every episode. And once I got to the Disney Renaissance of the 90s, I ended up making every episode 3 or 4 hours long. So in time, I'm spinning that off into the Keys and Kingdoms podcast, where my TAPAS co-founders and I will be proceeding with that project. If you want to know my thoughts on any Disney film released before the year 2000, season 1 of the podcast awaits. I'm just going to keep an eye on my script. I try to look at the camera and not at my script or at my own image on the screen, but no, yeah, I'm not pulling it off. I'm just going to read my script. It'll be the authentic me experience. I'm not comfortable making eye contact anyway. Oh, another segment on the podcast was to read the books of my youth, see if they hold up, and pretend I was adapting those books to television. Over the course of season 1, I got all the way through The Secrets of Droon. At that point, I intended to move on to other books, but I won't be doing that on the podcast either. I will be doing book vlogs with me on camera, just like you see me right now, talking about books as I read them. I don't know why I ever thought it was a good idea to put everything I wanted to talk about on my YouTube channel in a single, non-descriptively named podcast. Nobody who was interested in the topics would ever find out I was talking about them. So yeah, another spin-off, reading vlogs. I'll be dabbling in a number of titles. I will be reading books about cognitive behavioral therapy, seeing if they'll do me any good. I will be looking into The Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore, and I'll even be doing a reread of Droon, so that people who like Droon and would like to hear somebody talk about it will actually find out this time. Halfway through season 1, a third segment was added to the status quo, a segment devoted to reading fan fiction I wrote long ago. That one will continue to be a podcast segment for the foreseeable future, as I was very much in the middle of it when season 1 ended, not at a natural stopping point like with Disney and Droon. I'll be skipping the fan fiction segment today, but I will continue where I left off in the next episode. The reason I started the fanfic segment was because 2 of the recurring segments on the podcast had basically died out there at the halfway point. One of which was a segment about a parody musical I had written about The Legend of Drizzt. I often called it a Dungeons and Dragons musical in conversation, just seemed likely that more people would know what that meant, and it's true. Drizzt is set in the Forgotten Realms, a well-known Dungeons and Dragons universe. My musical was called Drizzt and the Companions of the Dance Hall, and in every companion segment, I would talk about one scene from the show, and I talked about the whole show and spoiled it to death before any progress was made in actually producing it, and I soon after ran out of anything more to say about it because I had talked about every moment of the show, and it wasn't going anywhere anymore. To this day, I still haven't found a composer who could find the time to work on more than a single verse of a song with me before dropping out. I have had very, very bad luck with composers over the years. I love music so much, but my own inability to make it with my own hands has held Tapas back like you wouldn't believe. I'm doing better there, composers wise. I have a guy. He's doing his best. Gets back to me every week at least. Hasn't finished anything to date, but I am seeing progress. It's good stuff. Could be a lot better, you know. Most indie creative stuff has a fuck ton of spectacular original music in it, and you really can't create anything without that. Why am I brought down so low as to be thrilled by these table scraps I'm getting after like 4 years? Anyway, I'll keep looking and we'll figure it out. If I ever talk about that musical again, it will be during the Dritz reading vlogs. Yeah. As soon as I start rereading the books, I will also start rewriting the musical and searching again for someone to compose it properly because, well, it was written almost 4 years ago. It needs redoing, and by God, I'm going to finish that show. And finally, way back in those far off days of late 2018 to mid 2019, the first segment of most episodes was the Team Salmon segment, referring to the core creative team who helped me put Tapas together. It was about the stories we hoped to create and art and ideas that were going into them. That segment, too, died because there was nothing left to say. We just weren't creating anymore. And so, for the entire second half of the season, I had nothing to say that was new. I was creating nothing, and so I got stuck in a rut, just talking about other creations than my own. Talking about Disney films, Droon books, fanfics, which, granted, I wrote, but a long time ago. First thing I'm doing here in season 2 is bringing back the Team Salmon segment. It took a global pandemic coming and, well, not exactly going, but becoming navigable to those of us who give a shit about science and medicine. But we are doing creative things again. Our first major fiction project, Better Yet, has hit YouTube, and I strongly encourage you to watch it. You don't have to watch it closely. It's an audio drama with, little portraits on screen. Listen to it, maybe while you crochet. And so here in season 2, the Team Salmon segment will once again open every episode, as it did long ago. But this time it'll be a guest segment. For the first 7 episodes of the podcast, I had my sisters with me. For the 8 episodes after that, I had my fiance. Ever since then, apart from a brief recurrence by my sisters in episode 29, I have been doing this podcast completely alone, and I don't want to do that anymore. So we'll always begin with a guest segment, to have someone here with me on screen like I am now, and we'll talk about projects we've done together in the past and projects we're hoping to put together in the future. So let's get that segment started. Salmon. That's a little jingle Natty made up. She always used to do it to get that segment started back when she was on the show and there was a Team Salmon segment. Yeah. It annoyed me, as you'll know from those early episodes, but it's been so long. It feels pretty good to be bringing that bit back. As I said, this segment will be a guest shot from now on. Yeah, a guest segment. So, who's my guest today? Well, that's easy. We've got a couple of them. My first guest is a wonderful and kind old man who's been at my side for a very long time. This is Sebastian. He's my boy. He's been the family dog, and he was the family dog for about 13 years, and now he's mine. Last year, when I was looking into apartments in Quincy, my mom suggested that I could take him in whenever I find a place, and I fucking cried at the idea. I'd never thought of it before, but it was perfect. He's always been my buddy. 8 months now we've been living together, and it's been just an absolute delight. Just this chill, mellow, elderly doggo who's just the best for snuggles. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking what my fiance cries out every time she sees me bring him on camera. You're thinking, why does he look so sad? It's just resting sad face. He's a very old dog with droopy eyes. He looks less sad when the fluff on his face goes out, but I don't let that happen anymore because it blocks his eyes. That's not cool. My puppy should see. Right, Sebastian? But it's not just me and him in this apartment anymore. Oh no. It's the circle of life, and it's good on toast. This is Butter, and this is Marmalade, and they're my kitties. I'll tell you their story in a moment. The first thing we're going to do in each Team Salmon segment after introducing the guest is a little Q&A. They don't like this. The guests will be human from now on, by the way. This is not, I'm just being gimmicky. There will be real guests next time. Anyway, on the TAPAS Patreon page, those who donate $11 a month or more get the chance to submit questions or talking points for every Team Salmon segment. I've been waiting until season 2 to start finally doing the Q&A bit, but I have had one person in that tier for a while, one Sadie Allen. We met many years ago when I was writing My Little Pony fan fiction. And we've just continued to chit chat about our creative stuff over the years, and she officially joined the TAPAS team some time ago. She designed the Phase 2 TAPAS logo you saw play over Sebastian at the beginning of this video. And she not only went to the $11 warrior tier, but straight to number 20, a knight of the TAPAS realm. And so for now, until something changes, we have one question per episode. I'm not complaining. One person who pays you $20 a month for the idea of you being an artist, it's a lot different from nobody doing that at all. Am I right? On that subject, a quick apology to my $1 patrons. You're supposed to get Patreon exclusive posts, and there has never been any, but there will be soon. I appreciate you sticking with me. We're very close to having some things which are in progress enough to be posted as works in progress on Patreon. Like, so close. Probably before this podcast comes out, honestly. So, Sadie's talking point for today is our first Q&A segment ever. Sadie would like to ask me about my writing process. I like that prompt, Sadie. I don't think I've ever discussed this in full detail. My writing process starts with this little digital voice recorder. I carry it around everywhere I go, and when I have an idea, I flip on the tape recorder, I speak it, leave myself a little message. At the end of every day, when I'm feeling up for it, I listen to every message. I type them all out onto a special document on my computer for that purpose. I sort them by topic while I type them out. Once the tape recorder is empty and all its ideas transfer to the document, I distribute them out to other documents. For some of these documents, such as my to-do list, if the idea was just something I should do, I put the new idea in its proper place, in the right order. Some stories I'm writing, likewise, I'm able to pinpoint exactly where in the story the new idea should go. But a lot of my stories, the ideas document is just far too much a stream of consciousness cluster. I just paste new ideas onto the end of the document to make that problem worse, and to be sorted out later. I'll get around to it. I've been having some success there. When it's time to actually write something, be it a fanfic or an official project or even a script for a podcast episode like this one, what I do is I take these clumps of ideas, I put them in the proper order, and I make the color of all the text in the document red. That's an important part of the process. When I know the exact wording of a moment, exactly what I'm going to say or the characters or what happens in minute detail, I change the text to black. Over time, it changes from a big red clump of ideas to a proper black and white script as I chip away at the red stuff little by little. Let's take a look at this script for the 4th episode of Keys and Kingdoms, The Choices. It's far from a final draft. We're nowhere near finishing the 1st episode. It'll be a good long couple of years, I imagine, before the 4th one comes out. There'll be plenty of edits to it. And that's just something that arises naturally from going back and giving completed writings a good once-over. It'll probably get another draft in the future, but for now, this mostly finished draft, you'll see the text is mostly black. Here we have a little bit of red. All these question marks here are the beginning of a verse of a song where I couldn't think of any lyrics. Here we've got some little red chunks amidst all this flirtatious dialogue where I'm not sure exactly what words get said, only that it bridges us, from this spot to this spot. Here is some red where we had to insert a little bit of fight choreography. Something to think about at the end. Shortly afterward is, where I decide exactly what kind of treasure emerges from the encounter. And very, very right at the end there, it's mostly red. I know how it all ends, but not exactly what the dialogue is. It's transitions like that that give me the most trouble. The beginnings and endings of chapters and episodes, those are hard for me. The transitions from one piece of a story to another. But it's mostly black, and so mostly an actual script. My writing spends its time in some intermediate state there between being all red and being all black. I work it a little bit at a time. One particularly common example, I mentioned where I met Sadie at My Little Pony fanfics. Uh, if I'm writing a My Little Pony story and I've got Zecora in a scene, right? Zecora in the show speaks entirely in rhyming couplets. So when she's in a scene I'm writing, often her dialogue stays red for a while. I literally type out, Zecora says something about the subject at hand, and I leave it there. It's red, so I can't like miss it when I'm skimming through again. It's obvious that it's incomplete. And while I write out the rest of the scene, and I go back and focus on writing rhyming dialogue for Zecora. And then after that, I maybe tweak the responses so that the other characters are indeed responding to Zecora's exact words. Because, when you're having a conversation with Zecora, you have to kind of decode what she's just said, since she's more concerned with rhyming than conveying information. And so, yeah, rhyming dialogue. And so, yeah, a lot of stuff stays red, and I just move on to the next bit, like, again, song lyrics and choreography. When script is all black, it's all done. I give the whole thing a few scans for clarity, some editing. If it's a fanfic chapter, I post it. If it's a podcast script, I record it like so. And if it's a script for a project, I retype it all into a properly formatted screenplay. Thank you for the prompt, Sadie. That was a good thing to talk about. I wouldn't have thought of that. I mentioned fanfics a couple of times, but I don't really do that anymore. I'm almost 29 years old, for Christ's sake. I have two unfinished fanfics, one for My Little Pony and one that's a crossover of all the CGI Disney princesses, Tangled, Brave, Frozen, Moana. And they've updated very little in the past 2 years, but I want to finish what I started. I've canceled some other fics that didn't get very far, but I put a lot of heart into these last two that are lingering. I write on Sundays. Hopefully, in time, I'll have enough to be able to proceed with the stories. So let's get back to our guests. I've got Sebastian. We've known each other for a very, very long time, haven't we, Sebastian? When I was a freshman in high school, we lost our old dog Rufus. He was a huge Doberman, sweet but stupid. He was only 6 years old, but he passed of cancer. My mom, if you've known my mom as long as I have, you start to get the sense that she doesn't think a house is a home unless there are at least 4 fur babies in it to look after. So it was only a day after Rufus passed that she came home with Sebastian here to fill the hole. He was incredibly tiny. Here he is. Nothing but a little ball of fluff. Could hold him in the palm of my hand. For the first couple days, he couldn't even walk. I'm that young. So that was 14 years ago. At the time, I'd only ever had large dogs, so I didn't even know that small dogs can live that long. Here he is, still with me, still my buddy. You have no screen presence whatsoever. You're just staring. As I said earlier, when I was making plans last year for finding an apartment here in Quincy, Illinois, my mom asked me if I'd like to take Sebastian with me. I basically had a huge emotional attack at the idea. I'd never considered it, but it's always been him and me. Here we are. I was working with my aunt in Wisconsin at the time. Well, Sebastian was back in Colorado with my mom. And when I came by to visit my mom, stayed there for a while and found an apartment in Quincy while I was there. So when I first came by to mom's place, it had been a while. I'd been in Wisconsin for a while, and Sebastian was just so happy to see me. He'd never been so excited, so they say. This old boy was like a puppy again. My happy boy. He gets mad at me when I leave the apartment. I gotta do that sometimes, okay, boy? Well, he's an old boy. He's got the bad hips. Doesn't really have functional teeth anymore. Got all those weird lumps on his skin that old dogs get. But it hasn't really changed him. He's always been an old dog at heart, quiet and calm and unassuming. And since we moved in together, he's gotten a lot better at communicating, which is good. I'm forgetful and I'm unmotivated, so I wasn't feeding or taking him outside quite as much as he needed. I had to power through that, start taking better care of my boy. And once I started doing that, he learned to expect it, to express his needs. When he needs something, he approaches me and he makes puppy noises. So I'm glad I improved his expectations. It's helped us set up a very good routine of feedings and walkies. We take care of each other. I'm a responsible pet owner, and he's the responsibility that prevents me from loafing around feeling sorry for myself all day. His need for meals, exercise, and outdoors reminds me that I need those things too. Sebastian, you take good care of me. He is, if you care to examine him, a Lachon. It's a crossbreed of a Bichon Frise, curly little French poofy dogs, and a Lhasa Apso, which is I want to say, Tibetan monastery guarding dog with a big booming bark. He's mostly like a Lhasa. He looks like one, though he doesn't really have the big voice they're known for. Fortunately, he doesn't bark much anyway. All he really takes from being half Bichon is that he doesn't shed, which is, a perk. That ups his value, I'd say. So, Sebastian, this is the Team Salmon segment. What do you offer Tapas and Stuff Productions? Well, it's cuteness, obviously. There he is. He also inspired one of the characters from a series I created called Our Pack, which is about 6 ordinary house pets who become shape-shifting magical warriors and protect the world. These characters were inspired by 6 family pets who were not all of them current, but recent when I conceived the series. And the Sebastian character was written as being the sort of the fresh-faced little rookie of the group, which kind of feels strange in retrospect. Sebastian had a very, very brief puppy phase. He's always been an old dog, even before he was actually old. If I ever get around to creating our pack, which I imagine I will, it'll just be a very long time. I didn't even put any characters from it on the TAPAS banner. We'll get to our pack after every story on the banner has been told, or at least started to be told. Note to self, talk about the banner in this segment on the next episode. Yeah, that'll be hype. Anyway, it will feel weird characterizing Sebastian as a young pup, as the new kid on the team. I suppose I'll get used to it. Let's face it, real Sebastian won't be around much longer to confuse the fictional version with. If it ends up being a long-running series, I can imagine a time skip occurring where the once youthful Sebastian is now an elderly Obi-Wan type, the sole survivor of the original cast. I could see that happening. Your face. You showed your face by saying it. I've been trimming his fur every month since I took him in. As I mentioned, his fur grows like perfectly on his face to obstruct his vision and around his butt to trap poop. And, we've generally tried to address those problems when we see them, but ever since I took him in, I've decided to take it a step further and just keep him trimmed all over. This is what he's looked like for most of his life. I've grown to like this better. like a sad little teddy bear now. In fact, the bumper you saw at the beginning of this episode was originally going to feature, yeah, this version of Sebastian. It was filmed around the same time this picture was taken. I filmed all four of the pets that were at my mom's house at the time. I had four different people do the voiceover. You'll see the different variations as phase two progresses. But as it came time to start this episode, I realized I just like current Sebastian so much better. This this is what I want to preserve. So I filmed a new one. He he kind of aged a lot the first few months I was here. He already lost some teeth. What teeth he still has are pretty brittle. He became a much slower walker, and he usually can't even go all the way around the block before completely running out of energy. He can't eat crunchy kibble anymore, even when I soak it in broth. And since canned dog food is a bit expensive, I've been making him homemade meals. Ground turkey, sometimes with a bit of beef, with rice, sprinkling of mixed vegetables, usually carrots and green beans, but occasionally mixing things up a bit. You know, be sure to look up what foods are and are not safe for animals to eat. It's extremely unpredictable. He enjoys it. He's become much more excited around meal times ever since then. He gobbles it right up, and he's had a much easier time pooping ever since we made that switch as well. Dog food is such a scam, honestly. I can't imagine dogs and cats actually enjoy that crunchy crap. Why do you think they always want what the humans are having? Millennials and Gen Z are starting to feed their pets as if they're actual living animals, and I hope all the kibble companies go under and we start feeding our dogs and cats real food going forward. So yeah, he's in his golden years for sure. He kind of went downhill when we moved him here, to this completely new place. He's even more afraid of strangers than I think he used to be. But he stabilized. He's not getting worse. He's been very consistent for a number of months now. All the same, I am braced for the end of his life. Braced, but it's still going to hit me like a comet. I just know it. But I think we're going to be okay for a while. I took him to the vet a couple months ago. I'd just gotten the kittens off the street, so I had to look into their health, and I took Sebastian along so he'd get a checkup too. He seemed to be in excellent health, but as I was going to the vet anyway, and he was very old and had last been to the vet 6 months ago, I figured it was called for. He is overweight. He is about 10 pounds overweight, and for a small dog, that is a lot of poundage. But the vet said his heart and lungs are okay. Yeah, I hear it. You know what they prescribed? Shampoo. So, yeah, 14 years old and his only health problem worth addressing is dandruff. That's a pretty clean bill of health for an old dog. Hi, Sebastian. You done being my teddy bear? You've been a very good guest. I'm going to let you go now. So now let's talk about these here kitties. They will not stay like this for very long. They're not especially cuddly. No fighting yet? Cool. No, there you go. They're friendly and trusting. They're not what you'd call affectionate, but I'll do my best. These two were born 4 months ago in the nearby village of Payson, where my grandpa lives with his girlfriend Sharon. It was a litter of 5 tiny kitties, along with their mama and another adult female. Sharon left food out for them on the back porch, and they gladly accepted it, but they went running if any human came near. Hmm? They gave up, but I have pictures to display. I'm just gonna let them go. When my mom and sisters came to visit in early June, they managed to trap 2 of the kittens and give them to me. First, they caught Butter early one morning. Here he is that day, so tiny and scared. And later in the day, they caught Marmalade. Mm, I wanted to, I didn't want to rip just one kitten away from its family and into this confusing situation that would damage a kitty mentally. I wanted them to have a litter mate with them to socialize with, and it paid off. When we got Marmalade, well, he joined Butter in hiding under the desk, and Butter was just very happy to see him. Started grooming and nuzzling him. Oh, looks so tiny and puffy. Butter is very sweet. Within just a day, I had him like this. He was willing to come out from under the desk and approach me, even lay on me and purr like this. Marmalade struggled more with fear, confusion, but over time he adapted too. He started approaching me and letting me pet him, eventually even purring. That was very emotional. He's a good one. Like I said, they're still not exactly cuddly and affectionate, except early in the morning when Butter chews on my ears. I don't know why he only does it just before it's time to wake up instead of when I'm going to bed or any other point during the night, but he loves chewing my ears. Actually, since I wrote that line, he's started chewing on my ears when I go to bed as well. Does it for minutes on end and purrs like mad the whole time. Try to let him do it because I like the purring. Clearly it's making him happy, but sometimes when you're mostly asleep and someone is eating your earlobe, an instinct kicks in and I throw him off. He is undeterred, and in the morning he keeps doing it until I wake up properly, which takes me some time. So yeah, it's been a wonderful experience having these kitties, rescuing feral kitties from the streets and reshaping them into proper pet cats. They were never aggressive, just very scared. What I thought would be the hard part was teaching them the litter box, and that was a total non-issue. They figured that out immediately. It's a cute little puff balls going potty. I love it. I wish I could save all the kitties, but these two, they make my life better, and I make all the difference in the world to theirs. Good kitties. Okay, so switching back to the podcast's typical format of being a voiceover with just some cheap slideshow style visual aids, this is a brand new segment called Podcast Review, in which I will listen to and discuss the corresponding episode of Season 1 of the podcast. Today, of course, I'll be looking at podcast number 1. Next time it'll be podcast number 2, and this will be just a little thing I do every episode, looking back on where I was 52 episodes ago. Before I get around to what I hope will be the routine nature of this segment, I just want to kind of look over the whole channel as it all stands right now. We have 77 subscribers. The 10 most popular videos on the channel are the 9 existing Little Mermaid retrospectives, of 10 which will exist in total. The least popular of which is the most recent one with just over 600 views, and the most popular video on the whole channel being, for whatever reason, the 4th retrospective with over 9,000! What a great opportunity to say that. What are the odds? My delivery was all off, but, I said the thing. The most popular non-Little Mermaid video on the channel is the trailer for Better Yet. Looks like it just broke 250 views. That's pretty cool. If we look into the top 20, I guess, top 3 outside of Little Mermaid is that trailer, followed by the first podcast and the exhibition of the irregular webcomic sound sets used in the Icewind Dale Let's Play. Both tied at 140. They've been perfectly tied for quite a while, it seems. Every time I check, they both have the same. And then, yeah, various. I think the reason podcast 45 is the second most popular episode is because Kenzie keeps coming back to it. She's working on catching up on the podcast, and she's been at 45 for like 5 months now. As you can see from this screenshot, a couple of my videos are closed captioned. I'm working on applying that to the entire channel. It's very time-consuming to write accurate and informative captions, but I find it super relaxing, so it's something I'll be returning to as often as I can. Currently, I'm working on captioning better yet. Only Scene 1 has them at the moment. So yeah, got a top 20 in the 70 views range. That's not bad. The least popular video on the channel is the 7th part of the Icewind Dale playthrough. It's tied with part 6 as having 1 view right now, but that's a recent development. It held the decision for a long time as the only video on the channel with no views at all. As for a like to dislike ratio, we're doing very well. Podcast number 17 was the first video ever to get a thumbs down, and I think it's the only one, apart from all the Little Mermaid retrospectives, that got really big. None of them have perfect scores, but they have darn good ones. That 85 is the worst grade on a Little Mermaid video, 85% there. And the only other video with any dislikes at all is Podcast 17, which, 2 likes, 1 dislike, 66%, still could be a lot worse. So subscribers, views, likes, it's all incredibly satisfying, and yet look at that comment count. 4 on the most popular video on the channel. That's kind of how it's been for me as an internet creator for the whole decade and a half I've been doing it on various platforms. People view my content and like it, but they don't tell me what they think. It's incredibly creepy. Like I'm on stage staring out at a packed but dead silent audience. I have never seen anything like it among creators on my same platforms and with a comparatively sized audience. I feel like people are usually more communicative with the creators they follow, and I just attract the silent ones. To the 4 or 5 people who regularly comment here on YouTube, please don't think I'm ungrateful. I love engaging with you. We have, after all, been friends for a very long time. To everyone else, please talk to me. You're freaking me out. So, podcast number 1 was the 3rd video posted on the channel on November 18th, 2018. YouTube will tell you it came out a couple months later on January 30th, and that's because until that day, all the videos on the channel were unlisted. I was not yet ready to put myself out in public, so I only showed the videos to the TAPAS Insider Facebook group. On January 30th, the first 10 TAPAS podcasts and the first 2 Icewind Dale playthrough videos all went public at once. So let's pull up podcast number 1. Its thumbnail. The thumbnails were a later addition. I don't remember when exactly I went back and replaced all podcast thumbnails with something other than just the logo and a number. I had it incorporate all the topics that would be covered. Usually the cover of that episode's Droon book, and images from the Disney films of the episode. As no Disney films were discussed in the first episode, I went with this Companions of the Dance Hall costume design sketch. They're a bit clumsy. The Season 1 thumbnails very MS Paint, which is exactly how they were made. I have started making all my visual aids in PowerPoint instead, and hopefully that'll be better. First podcast was about 1 hour and 7 minutes long. It was the longest episode until episode 12, which beat it by 10 minutes, and episode 12 held the title until episode 44, which was the point when every episode started getting really long. Episode 48, at 3 hours and 35 minutes, is the longest episode to date, and I hope it stays that way for a good long while, with the Keys and Kingdoms segment excised. I'm hoping these will be much easier to swallow in the future. So, as I'm about to start listening, I'm looking at the chapter select. That's a very recent addition to the podcast. Once I discovered how to properly format those, I added them to every video on the channel that would need them. And that was only a couple of months ago, so I see we had the 4 segments in the order in which I had intended at the time to present them. Companions, Team Salmon, Keys and Kingdoms, and Droon. From episode 2 onward, I moved Droon to before Keys and Kingdoms, and so from episode 6 to 13, they were in a random order. Episode 14 returned them to the previous order: Companions, Team Salmon, Droon, Keys and Kingdoms. In episode 30, the fanfiction segment fully replaced the Companions and Team Salmon segments. So, from then on it was fanfiction, and then Druin and Keys and Kingdoms. And starting in episode 42, I reversed the order. Keys and Kingdoms first, fanfiction last, because Keys and Kingdoms was the part where people were there for, and it made more sense to front-load it. And so looking at the chapter select, I am seeing that the Druin segment, which I decided to divide into 3 subsegments for ease, as I first introduced the series, then reviewed the first book, then introduced the adaptation fantasy idea. That took up the entire second half of the episode, which is rather amusing, because from there, I would estimate that the Keys and Kingdoms and Druin segments tended to be of equal size. Druin maybe having the edge until the Keys and Kingdoms segment just bloated into one big fat killer segment. Ugh. Anyway, I'm going to actually start watching now, and I'm determined to make this podcast review episode a short and concise one. Just the vital, interesting information. The first thing you'll notice about podcast number 1 is that it's really quiet. You have to be wearing headphones and have the volume up pretty high in order to hear it well. A fact that, true story, I briefly forgot earlier when I took a break to watch a different video and completely blasted myself in the eardrums. Jesus Christ. I fixed the quietness issue about halfway through podcast number 2. I realized my gain was set too low. It kind of came back around, I think number 45-ish, when my Blue Yeti microphone died. And I couldn't afford to replace it, so I got the Fiduci I'm using right now, which just isn't quite as powerful. My sisters Zia and Arami were with me for that first episode, and I briefly flashed these visual aids, first of me with them, and then a nice one of the 3 dogs there at my mom's house. Sebastian you've met, and Tiny Poppy, and Big Clovis. I just, I had both my sisters on board for most of that episode, and I encouraged conversation. Arami would continue to join me for most of the Keys and Kingdoms segments of the first 6 episodes. Next thing I noticed when I went from the introduction to the first segment, the visuals did not change to be about the upcoming segment. That's something I added almost immediately, I think, at the suggestion of my friend Meredith. I'll have to check. In the first segment, I introduced Drizzt and the Companions of the Dance Hall and talked about its first scene. I displayed the costume designs I had sketched out. I think they're still mostly solid, and I sang bits and pieces of the first 2 songs, which are both in that first scene. It's the longest scene in the show, by far. I'd say it's the most solid scene. I'm rethinking a few aspects, including a few that were core elements of the entire play. Actually, hearing myself talking about those elements actually makes me think they're pretty good, so, decisions. It definitely includes most of the very best jokes and ideas in the whole play. That's true of a lot of my stories. The best scene is very early on. Often it's the very first scene, and that kind of makes me all sad. Like, doesn't that mean it was all downhill from there? So that lasted about 10 minutes, and we took a little break before going into the second segment, the Team Salmon segment. What that segment was initially all about was going through 7 story ideas, which I had posted on my blog a month earlier. Indeed, that was the only thing on the TAPAS blog for a long time. I brought it back 17 months later, and it's updated at least once a month since then, for the most part. No visual aids accompany the segment here in the first episode, in which I talked about the premise and first episode of Some Sweet Kind of Vampire. Long intended to be the very first story from TAPAS and Stuff Productions, well, it's on the list. It'll turn up eventually. Let's see, listening for anything relevant beyond me just summarizing the story of the Some Sweet Kind of Vampire pilot episode. Nothing I've said about the show so far is anything I've decided to change. I mentioned that maybe I don't intend it to be the first story we produce, as there are many licensed songs I intend to incorporate into the story at various points. Since then, I've been giving some serious thought to modifying the premises of most of those scenes so that public domain or original music might take its place in the story so it's actually affordable. But perhaps TAPAS will be big enough by then, who's to say? I like that at the end, Arami wanted to hear more of the story. That made me happy. Then we went into the Keys and Kingdoms segment, and this should be interesting. My ideas on what exactly Keys and Kingdoms should be, how it should work, have changed a lot over time. I'm wondering, where did I stand as of the first podcast episode? Well, okay, naturally, I was still on the idea of using the open game license. That changed largely because I wanted a mana-based magic system and better rules for creatures of different sizes. So for most of the segment, I talked about the 10 core races. As fantasy gaming has moved away from using the term race, I followed suit. Seems like a good thing to do. I call them peoples now instead of races. Let's take a look at the visuals and ideas I presented. I used these Kingdom Hearts renders of various Disney humans who are allies in Kingdom Hearts to represent humans, typical RPG humans. For dwarves, I brought up the 7 dwarves. I had some ideas on making K&K dwarves different from the classical RPG dwarves ever since I abandoned the OGL idea. And once again, I presented Princess Kida as a representative of the elves, since the Atlanteans were the closest thing to elves Disney really has. Still intending to take a smidgen of inspiration from there. Then I introduced natives. I displayed Mickey, Donald, Goofy, and a couple of examples from all Anthro films. Originally based on the idea of making Kingdom Hearts make sense mechanically, in that nobody ever thinks anything of seeing Donald and Goofy running around. Gargoyles naturally use this awesome cast picture. I'm loving Zia's reactions in this segment. She's very vibrant. Then Merfolk, this is a nice pick from A Little Mermaid 3. We paused to discuss Zia's tendency to eat ice cubes, as Eremi, to pass the time, brought her one to be cheeky. Fairies, the visual aid I used here was once again Kingdom Hearts renders of all the fairies from early Disney films. It's a basic good example, and I cited the Children of Oberon examples from Gargoyles. Yeah, I don't seem to have changed much about the idea of Keys and Kingdoms fairies, though thus far I'm not sure how to handle their unique powers in the new rules system. Then Pixies showed a very nice picture from the Tinkerbell franchise. I mentioned Pixies can be squashed like bugs, if only they can be hit, so I guess even then I was pondering the effects of creature size on hit point total and the various alternative methods you'd have to use when playing as a small creature. And from there I discussed the 9th and 10th core races that I scrapped and what I replaced them with. There was the Nemo, inspired by the Nobodies of Kingdom Hearts. I discussed the new mechanics of representing the Nobodies in a new world, but it just didn't work as a core race. Then there was the, I guess at that particular moment I called them soul constructs. I constantly went back and forth on whether they're heart constructs or soul constructs. The party line for that concept was a core race that can represent characters as diverse as Pinocchio, Tron, Olaf, and Baymax. That was a recurring party line, in fact. Are those Kingdom Hearts renders of all the characters? Yeah, I guess Kingdom Hearts 3 was very close to release, so yeah, no reason to assume we didn't have Olaf and Baymax renders at the time. I eventually decided they were simply too diverse to be a single race mechanics-wise, and the premise that they are constructs given sentience and emotion by the love of their creator, simply inaccurate, really. These 4 are very different things and will be represented in the K&K world accordingly. They will be options, just not one singular core option. And so I replaced them with the Mishka and the Sirsa. Gosh, I forget that I actually came up with both at the same time. The Mishka seems like such a core aspect of the setting and its mission statement. It's weird that there was ever a time it didn't exist. Incredibly brief though that time was. Funny thing, people sure do have some misconceptions, like they can't tell an Anthro character from a non-Anthro character that represents the same animal. You get a lot of people appalled that the main characters of Luca help the humans catch fish, despite the very first scene of the film clearly displaying that fish and crabs are every bit the animals that humans think they are. They weren't selling out their kind, they were hunting wild animals. Just the very notion of, why does Goofy talk and Pluto doesn't? Because Goofy's a person and Pluto's not. It's that simple. It annoys me. Recently, I talked about the xenofiction stories that inspired the wildlife theme, namely Bambi and the Lion King, and the most famous example probably being the non-Disney Watership Down. And Kenzie says, Zootopia? No, not Zootopia. We are talking about the wildlife theme. No anthropomorphism. None. Zootopia is about natives, not animals. Similarly, Mishkas. Mishkas are the tiny civilized rodents who live in secret societies within human societies. This is very, very common in animation. Zia's thoughts immediately went to Ratatouille, but yeah, pretty close, but no. Clearly those characters are rats, not Mishkas. They wear no clothes, they have no technology, they move like real rats. On a different note, Mickey Mouse is not a Mishka. He is large enough to operate at a human level. He is a native. And there wasn't much to say about Circe's going in, but I've come up with some stuff. And so, yeah, that made sure the Pixie wasn't the only teeny tiny core peoples, and from there I talked about the idea of the Keys and Kingdom's art style, something which I basically completely forgot about a couple of months later when I started designing Choices characters. Currently, Stacy is working on redesigning the Choices characters so they look Disney. That hasn't gone very far, but it's looking fabulous. And then my mom came home from work, and we just talked to her for a little while. I did not turn off the recording or cut that part out at all. I developed the habit of cutting little things out, at least in the Gargoyles retrospectives, recorded a year and a half ago, coming soon, I swear. I did cut it out when my mom would barge in and interrupt. She does that a lot. Here, I just left it in. And then I talked about the themes. I'm not entirely sure if the themes are still a thing, maybe kinda. We still haven't named the RPG yet, but the basic idea is that, yeah, Keys and Kingdoms is only one campaign setting in it, and not all of them have to be fantasy at all, you know? And finally, I introduced the notion of the Disney collection to begin the following episode. Much later, I returned to the recording alone, without the girls, to open the Droon segment. Gosh, even at the beginning, I was clearly planning to give the same treatment to other book series. In time, the Droon segment came to be the only segment with really dynamic and changeable visuals. Every chapter of every Droon book has 2 illustrations in it, and I always displayed every illustration as I described the story. And from there, I'd also show pictures of the actors I was imagining playing the characters. Let's just go with a nice official picture of each book's cover art. I'm going to re-listen to all those segments again when I start up the Droon vlogs, just to very distinctly remember what I said about the books last time. Talk it over again. I do a lot more editorializing here in the first book than I ever did later. I gotta remember to keep doing that, to keep riffing every book so it stays interesting. Actually, I think I was maybe too mean here in the first book, but I don't know. Most of the jokes were good. I may just have to say everything I said here verbatim. I do want it to be better thought out. I'm going to make sure I assemble an ironclad Droon cannon while doing the Droon vlogs. I have a very strong opinion about Spar's car. I'm remembering running gags I hope to introduce into Droon vlogs, questions I'd like to ask Tony. I was not very careful with the photos I took of the illustrations. Some of them ended up being sideways, some very blurry. I started doing that better as the Droon segment went on. And then I talk about adapting the book to screen, having in full the live-action adaptation dream. I talked about ideas other than casting, for pretty much the only time. Gonna have very deep adaptational thoughts in the reading vlogs. Oh, and in very early Droon vlogs, I don't know when I stopped exactly, but I used to very sloppily dress up the actors as the Droon characters using MS Paint. It was funny, but it embarrassed me too much to keep going. And then I concluded the podcast ever so briefly. The conclusion chapter was only 12 seconds long. Not sure why I bothered marking it. So that was a nice dive into the past. I'm really excited to see how things developed over time in the early podcast before I kind of went into zombie mode at the halfway point there. All right, the inspiration segment begins now. This will be another audio segment so that I may, after the fact, display visual aids of the subjects we discuss. I'm here with my co-founders, my fiancée, Nathalie Jenfjord.
Hello.
And our dearest friend, McKenzie Eby.
Hi.
When I was searching for new segment ideas to debut in Season 2, with so many segments retired, Kenzie here suggested one about things which have inspired us as creators, and that just straight shot, first idea, excited me immediately. I knew it would carry a lot of content, so over on my only mostly dead but not all dead fanfiction.net profile, most of that profile page is taken up by what I called long ago my list of inspiring things, a list of stories which in the order in which I came to appreciate them, they're listed, reshaped me as a writer type. So the first 24 episodes of this segment will see me going down that list again, discussing the individual inspiring thing and how it's impacted my life. The first thing on my list is Pixar, the second is Disney. So we're doing a doubleheader here. Obviously, Disney films are a big deal to me. Until today, they had their own segment. And Pixar, a subsidiary of Disney, but arguably far more powerful in the cinema world. Creators of great technology, which begets gorgeous art, and storytellers with far more interest in making adults cry and reflect on life than they are at dazzling children with pretty colors, though they do that too. A film company so good at what they do that every time they make a film that's worth a B+, the entire world shakes their head in profound disappointment. Though I'm not certain how often I'll be able to bring in guest stars who find the thing inspiring so that they can discuss it along with me, but I know that here I can for sure. Kenzie here, well, her screen name on most sites is Pixar Girl or Pixar Gem, so it's kind of her area. And Natty, well, Tapas did start in a chat room primarily dedicated to cars. Later on, these two will be joining me for the spin-off podcast in which I continue exploring the world of Disney with them at my side just as soon as they stinking catch up with season 1. So they're up to speed on the stinking segment and can stinking continue it with me. Jesus Christ. Didn't mean to make it awkward there. Okay, so most of the time in this segment, what I'll be doing is describing everything I can remember about the title. That's a bit too all-encompassing, so we're just going to share what it means to us, share our Disney Pixar story. So I'm putting the script aside now, just talking points. Kenzie, start us off with yours.
Hello, my name is McKenzie. Sage already introduced me, so yeah, I'm a fan of Pixar. So I guess I'll just do this in chronological order, starting with like the Disney movies I watched most as a kid, which were Aristocats, The Jungle Book, and The Rescuers. Surprisingly, not The Rescuers Down Under, mainly because like we just didn't own it on VHS.
Yeah, those are older ones, Silver and Bronze Age stuff.
Yeah, like I think I like these movies simply because these movies as a kid simply because they were like simpler and like safer and appealed to my like love of like stuffed animals and cute
Nice.
Like I like them. Both of them have two of the three that I mentioned have Ava Gabor in it.
Yep.
Like just like and to have like Phil Harris, that's what his name is.
Yeah, they reused cast members a lot in that age.
Yep. Yeah. Like so yeah, like The Jungle Book, like I obviously watched other Disney movies as a kid, but these are the ones that I remember watching the most as a kid on VHS, and like yeah, like
this is
sorry.
Your personal journey with how it shaped you is what we're going for here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I also remember watching The Lion King a lot as a kid on VHS, and like I remember owning a lot of stuffed animals and toys of it. So there's that too. Now like the Disney movies that I didn't watch were mainly the live action stuff as a kid, and I mean like live action stuff as in like not the Disney remakes like live action, but like just back in the 90s and 2000s live action stuff. Back when they had some sort of like original ideas for live action stuff.
Yeah. Never exceptional in that department.
Yeah. Like I've mentioned this like in a Bob show like question for the review like thing, but like the movie that I was like afraid of the most as a kid was like Flubber, like mainly because like the trailers just freaked me out, like and like the song like in it like was weird, and I thought like, and it also created this fear that like of small moving things going into my body and coming out, and so, like it's though not the. So yeah, whenever the trailer for Flubber showed up on VHS tapes like Hercules or Hunchback, I usually like ran away screaming and crying. like honestly, I didn't get over my fear of Flubber until like I watched the Nostalgia Critics review and thought, wow, I was actually afraid of that.
Yeah.
Cause like, yeah, I was like 16 by the time I watched that. Like, and like, wow, I'm an airhead. I've gotten over my fear of live action. Yeah. So as I grew older, like my interest became more primarily towards like Pixar movies. Though I do remember that as a kid, I wanted to like own all Disney movies, like like even like the direct to video movies. Like I think I have too many of those direct to video movies than I
Yeah.
should, including Hunchback and like Belle's Magical World and like Tarzan and Jane. Yeah, yeah, and a couple Dark Age movies like Lilo and Stitch and Brother Bear. Like, I think, okay. But
This
yeah,
is a personal journey stuff. How did you become Pixar girl?
okay, yeah. Well, okay, well, like that's where we get into like two that. Well, let's fast forward to 2005. Like, basically, like I started watching like behind the scenes video of scenes like the features on the DVDs, like on the Lion King, like and the Incredibles, were mainly the Lion King is what I remember most because they had that little tour on the three DVDs. Like, do you remember those 3D Safari tours on the DVDs?
Yeah. Did they like let you change direction at some point? So
Yeah,
there's like
yes,
two
yes.
versions of each encounter. Yeah,
Yeah,
I played that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, good. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And okay, and and also like this is when I started going on to like discovered Wikipedia and started like looking up stuff like to research and sp- and then in 2006 I started watching like these um well back at the time they called it Pixar podcast, but like it wasn't the Pixar podcast. It showed basically the behind the scenes feature, behind the scenes like things of like making the first Cars movie, like and like I was just really fascinated by it, and like it also made me discover my first crush on. It's also when I first had a crush on Owen Wilson, like seeing him with a skateboard and all that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And and so yeah, like I didn't actually see Cars until like later that summer, like August, like when my grandma and I think aunt also took me and my younger cousins to like see it in theaters, and I really loved it. And like it was also my first experience with like character development before I actually knew what the word was,
Yeah.
because I hated Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
I wanted to smack this boy in the face. Before that, like I always just like took Disney heroes at face value with no real like thinking like that they're good guys and thus I like them and thus I want them to stop the bad guys. Like and the so like to have like Lightning be such a whiny little shit, like whiny and asshole shit person, like that I want to smack across the face, like that was like just kind of an interesting journey,
Yeah.
and like and especially for a 10-year-old me, just like so weird. Like and like it became like my big movie obsession, much like how Frozen would be for my younger sister. Like I just like wanted to learn everything about it. I wanted to like I got excited when there was something Cars related that wasn't a toy, because I was 10 and I had to eventually grow out of the whole like toy phase because yeah.
Like
So
that, I
when
guess, for a while.
yeah. So yeah, like I even it was also like the main fan fiction I read when I first found fan fiction in 2008.
Yep.
And
Same.
so so yeah, like it also made me want to work at Pixar, like and so every year, for every Pixar film, I went to see it on opening day, with the exception of Finding Dory, because like the tickets were all sold out and like no one could actually take me to see it on opening day. I still saw it on opening weekend, but you know,
Mhm.
yeah, like I still like a lot. I like a lot of modern Disney stuff. I don't go see films that I wouldn't find in myself enjoying in some way. Like
Yeah.
like even the Disney remakes, if I do see like even though I didn't want to see like, Beauty and the Beast, I still found myself like, finding it fine. Like, I did like some things. So yeah, like well I'm not so yeah, like I haven't like really found a Disney film that I hated or disliked.
Okay, that's good.
So yeah, like
Well, you're saying you don't go to a movie if you don't think you're really gonna enjoy the film.
yeah. Like the two times that failed was like Shrek Forever After and Avatar and The Last Airbender.
Yeah, those let you down.
Yeah. Both came out in 2010 too. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. And like I think I should probably add one more thing. Like
Mhm.
when like Lindsay also went to my younger sister Lindsay also went through a similar experience of like wanting to work in the animation business when it came to Frozen. She was like she was gone in her freshman year of high school. Like I was a senior. We went to see it in like November of 2013, like together on opening day, because she mainly wanted to see it for Idina Menzel and because like she was obsessed with Wicked and just like fell in love with like the characters and the animation and wanted to basically go into the animation industry just so that she because like Frozen changed her like in that way.
Yeah, big,
So
it's a big thing. Big thing.
so yeah. So yeah, she's successful in that she graduated with a degree in character animation. Go check out her YouTube channel.
Ooh, okay. I'll.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to tell me where I can find that, and
Okay, yeah.
since you mentioned it, I'll link to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and
And I'm still working on my degree in studio arts.
yeah, and yeah. I mean, we hope
With the
Mackenzie
hope of
does make her way to Pixar at one point, and but she still. Sorry, I just hope you still stick with us while you can do that.
yeah.
Don't forget
Okay.
about
Yeah.
us.
Well, I'm going to, dude. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
don't worry, I'm not. I'm not.
All right, and good to. How about you, Natty?
Yes, I am still here,
Yes.
just listening.
Yeah, just let's hear a story. You helped me outline it a little yesterday while we were preparing.
Oh yes, my relationship to Disney and Pixar in general. It's been a love affair that has lasted my entire life, actually.
Hmm.
My entire childhood, as long I can remember, has been through, growing up in the late 90s and early 2000. I grew up with um, what do you call it in English?
Disney
Vi-
Renaissance.
no, videotapes.
Videotapes, right?
Yeah, videotapes.
VHS. Yeah.
Yes, videotapes with Disney. Either we bought them in video stores, or we recorded them when it was some kind of Disney movie airing on the TV and stuff. But yeah, it has mostly defined my childhood. So I grew up with many Disney classics. And well, when it comes to Pixar, it kind of complicated because the last Pixar movie I actually saw that was on videotape was Monsters Inc. And af- after that, the Pixar movies began to be more of a DVD thing. And as a child, I was pretty skeptical to this DVD thing, but it proved to be a good thing actually.
Yeah.
Yes, so the first Pixar movie I saw on DVD was actually Finding Nemo.
That's a damn good DVD.
Oh yeah, it was. And it was even more satisfying that I didn't even have to press stop or rewind it.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, the extra features was something else. Why don't they do that anymore?
Yeah. Pixar. They had that brief run of just really good big 2-disc DVD sets. I've never quite seen anything like it since, but that might be because I've never had a Blu-ray player. Maybe they put it all there now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Apparently, there's many more extra features on Blu-ray versions. But anyways, Cars is the Pixar movie that has meant the most to me because it was through Cars I met everyone who would be involved in my life later on. You and Kenzie, for example, my best friend of the in the entire world, Kelsey, wherever she is right now, and many more of our friends.
Hmm.
It still means a lot to me, even today. Of still, still reeling in the feelings of Cars 3. Yes, I saw it. I saw it on theaters. Yes, I am still feeling about it. No, I'm not gonna rewatch it because I don't want to cry again.
I got us. You were here. We were about to go on a trip, but I got us to that trip to the theater to see Cars 3 because we had to do it. I had to be the hero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the best decision ever because it was my last and only chance to see a Cars movie in theaters. And if I missed that, I knew there were no other way, no other chance. But we did it. You are my forever, my hero, and I got to see a Cars movie in theaters. That felt damn satisfying.
Well, hopefully we'll see like our favorite characters again in like the TV series next fall.
Oh
Is it-
yeah, it has been talks about a Cars TV series, but I'm not exactly sure if it's a real thing or just a rumor. So
Yeah, I haven't heard
I just
about that.
wait and see.
Oh,
It was one of the things announced at Disney's Investor Day in 2020.
oh, I don't remember that. I remember
What?
the Monsters Inc. one that's airing now. It's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, I have heard talks about a Cars TV show way before Disney Plus was even a thing. Apparently, there some years back, sometime in 2017, it was talks in the Tumblr forum for I don't in Tumblr about the possibility of Cars the TV series, which
Hmm.
most of the fandom was pretty on board with, but they weren't exactly sure if it was just an idea or something that would actually happen. So,
And I feel like I would have remembered hearing about that at that investor day. That was a big thing.
Well, it
oh
was
yeah,
pretty quick. Well,
Hmm.
it was pretty quick, like compared to like the Marvel stuff and
Yeah,
like
must have missed it.
oh yeah. But when it comes to cars, one thing confounded me more than ever, and still does at this point: the lost media. And by that I mean that the short that was supposed to come 2014 and still hasn't today this day.
Yeah, that's right. It was a police themed Cars short that just
yeah,
it kept being
yes,
delayed
it
and
was.
delayed and
Yes, it was about sheriff in limelight for once, and it was named To Protect and Serve, which I was very excited about. There were like a big hype about it. Amazon sold like toy merch and stuff like that. There were even a picture book for young children. So lots of fans just waited and waited, but it never came. So it became 2015, then 16, 17, and today, 2021, still no sight.
Hmm.
So I decided to do some digging around, find out why didn't it happen. So I couldn't find out much except that the let's see, it was Pixar Canada who did the Cars tunes, if I'm correct.
yeah, sounds right.
Yes, and it was it, I'm not sure how to say this in English. Not exactly liquidated, but put down.
Something like that. Yeah, Pixar Canada.
Down.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah,
got
shut
Yes,
down.
shut down.
so
Yeah, sounds right.
yeah, they shut down. I had my research about the lost media went nowhere, so I had a discussion about this with my friend Kelsey, who are also a very big Cars fan, and she came to the conclusion that it's most likely they couldn't go through with it because they were being shut down. But she thought they could at least announce that it wasn't going to become anything instead of letting if instead of a lot of fans was being let down and disappointed, and to this day also still wondering if it was ever going to return.
Yeah, I wonder how far they got because I know
Well,
there was gonna be a third Planes film, and that got cut. That got shut down when the
Yeah,
whole
that
Florida
that got
studio shut. The
yes
Florida
that
studio.
yes that got also shut down, but at least we know that the supposed Planes 3 was shut down, but we still don't know anything about the short To Protect and Serve to this day.
Yeah, just never said anything about it.
you
Yeah,
know,
so
like,
I
you
have
know,
considered to send an email to Pixar themselves and ask about it because I have to get answers.
like I think you'd be better off doing a like letter in written form, like that's what I did. Then again, I did that back in 2008, so don't know if that would actually work now.
You never know. Sometimes you send letters, and sometimes people see them. They get a lot, but you never know what they have time to look at.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Either way, I'm still determined to find out at some point.
Well, like I heard on Tumblr, someone who did actually speak with like Michael Wallace, the voice of Sheriff, that like the cast did actually record all their lines. It's just
Well, yeah, I figured it definitely got that far at least. I
yeah.
mean, I
Yeah,
feel like it got like really far, but then the release date came and just nothing.
Like
yeah, yeah. That's something fishy, and I'm determined to find out what happened.
see, this is why I also want to kind of work at Pixar just so that I can know things like what was originally going to
Know the
happen.
things, yeah. What got put down? Because man, you see what went into what you see what goes into Pixar films. Like they completely changed the story over the course of production. It's insane, based on what you see from early production. But they put so much effort into a story they end up scrapping.
Yeah, like it kind of makes me the sad think of DreamWorks and how sad like their state is like because like they can go through like several like they get far enough into production to start animating and making musical numbers on like certain films like Me and My Shadow and Larrikins, and like the other and like Boo, like and like another Pixar, not Pixar, DreamWorks film called Boo was far enough that it was working on merchandise. It had merchandise that was.
Wow, yeah, that's true. That happens a lot with the. Yeah, God, you're right. A lot of DreamWorks films do get canceled.
Yeah, yet somehow Boss Baby exists.
Yeah, the Pixar did have a canceled film. They had Newt, and they canned it because Rio beat it to the premise. Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but at least we have like an answer why.
Yeah, we know that that's the basic reason. Hey, I got a couple of Loki memes to show you. I'll show the viewers too. If you're listening to this, you should be seeing this meme on your screen right now.
Nice.
And another.
That was great.
Anyway, Natty, a question about something you said much earlier.
Yes.
The Disney movies you had on video. Which ones did you have that you remember the most, that you most like to watch?
Oh, that's a huge collection we had. I can remember we had Lion King and Hercules on video, but also a lot of the first Disney movies like Snow White, Pinocchio, and we never had Fantasia, but we had Bambi and all that. Oh yeah, we also had Lion King. Did I say Lion King?
Yeah.
You opened with Lion King, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about another movie, but absolutely not Lion King. I meant we had Jungle Book and a personal favorite, Robin Hood.
Robin Hood's a lot of fun. It's very charming.
Oh yeah, it is. Me and my family has grown up with a lot of Disney movies, and we are very aware of Disney movies that doesn't get as much attention as the other get. Personally, I'm very fond of Robin Hood and The Great Mouse Detective.
Oh, I love that one. That's great too.
Oh yeah, and I also grew fond of The Black Cauldron.
Really, you discovered that one at a young age, huh? That's usually kind of a more hidden thing people find later.
Yeah.
And I'm jealous of you both. My home videos when I was growing up were shit. Lots of Good Times Entertainment and just the most cheap, obscure stuff. There was Fern Gully 2, which was so inferior to the original. Like, there are shitty animated sequels, and then there's shit, and then there's Fern Gully 2, right? There was Animals of Farthing Wood, Nick and Noel, just all this cheap crap. I mean, just occasional rentals, I guess, of Disney films, but man, we did not have any good home videos when I was tiny.
Well, they weren't exactly Disney at the time, were they?
Well,
I mean, there were Disney VHS tapes when I was a kid. Why didn't I have any?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Serendipity. Oh, that was another VHS tape I had as a kid. But it was all this weird. I would love to know where my grandma got her VHSs, that they were always just this bizarre, obscure stuff.
I think I had one obscure animated film that that I had on VHS. It was like a 1950s animated film called of the Snow Queen, originally Russian produced but had an English dub that I think was from the 50s version rather than the one from the 90s, I think. like I didn't even know until like looking at Wikipedia that it had two different English dubs.
Hmm.
Just so yeah. Like I like the English dub definitely like had one of the English dubs had Paul Frees, and I think he was the 1950s version.
I
So
see.
so I think that's the one I'm pretty sure that's the one I had.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was just a random
So like
little.
one dub from the 50s and then another much later?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I didn't have the one from much later. I just had the one. Like,
Yeah, I know you didn't have the one from much later, but there was one much later.
Yeah, there was one. Yes, I apologize for the redundancy.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I would just like to say, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that, you check season 1 of the podcast for my thoughts on any Disney film that came out before the year 2000. But if you want Natty's and Kenzie's thoughts on those films, you can usually find them in the comment sections of the podcast episodes.
Yep.
And
Maddie is more thorough than me.
no, she's not.
I mean, well, she's more brief than me. I meant.
Yes, she's
I
brief.
I used the wrong word. Sorry.
Yeah, that was the exact opposite of what you meant there. Yeah. And in fact, for you go from episodes 8 to 15. In fact, Natty was with me for those episodes when we covered late package era, early Silver Age.
That's right. I was kind of your little audience with
Yeah, well,
just beside you.
Yeah, more of a co-host. You talked
Oh
about.
yeah, a co-host. I lost the word.
Yeah, you talked
Please,
about.
please forgive me because I am Swedish and not a native English speaker.
But you still look. Yeah, but you still know pretty good English.
Yeah, I mean, you have it.
Yeah, but because of the lockdown, my English is a bit rusty.
Yeah, that's why we meet up like this pretty much every week. A couple times a week if we can.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Natty was, and no, I got so sick of doing those segments alone. After that, I wanted to go. At the very beginning, I had Air Me, and then I had Natty, and then it was just me for a very long time. And
I also co-star in your Gargoyles retrospective.
yes, I gotta get to those. I got one more Little Mermaid retrospective to do. Just one, and then it'll be time for Gargoyles.
That's right.
Okay, and now to conclude, my Disney story. Okay, I've got notes here, not so much a script. I'm gonna try to get back into that habit, just to be a little more off the cuff going forward. So I am a little bit older than my partners here. I was born in 92, them in 95. So I mean, yeah, I occasionally saw Disney Renaissance films and some older ones when I was little, because I know I had 101 Dalmatians. That's an older one I remember. Yeah, my mom's, like when I was like preschool, kindergarten age, I had a lot of Disney videos. But yeah, before then, at my grandma's when I was like 3-4 years old, it was just the most bizarre stuff. Anyway. I never thought much about the Disney films I watched. They were just they were the movies that I had. And in my truly formative years in the early 2000s, Disney wasn't up to much. In the early 2000s. Although I did sometimes wonder whatever happened to animated musicals. Otherwise, I was pretty okay with the landscape of animation at the time that Disney was kind of sitting out of that decade. I liked the first 2 Shrek movies pretty good, but mostly I was cray-cray about Pixar. They kept Disney afloat that decade. You can't pretend otherwise. Even before then, I have like vivid memories of going to see Toy Story in theaters when I was 3, mostly of Sid's toys surrounding Woody. And A Bug's Life when I was in kindergarten. I really liked that. I had lots of activity books and did lots of drawings. And I definitely saw Toy Story 2 and Monsters Inc. in theaters. I've certainly never missed a Pixar film, basically, but it was Finding Nemo. Oh my god, I was crazy about Finding Nemo that summer. I talked about it nonstop for over a year. My grandma liked it. She was up for taking me to see it in theaters many times. And so we saw it so many times in theaters, and eventually I came to memorize the whole film and recite it on car trips, so people would stay entertained, and so they wouldn't get bored at the wheel there.
This was before phones.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, the drivers couldn't use their phones. The drivers got to listen to me doing that.
Well, I meant you couldn't watch stuff like on your phones back then.
No. And then let's see, what was that? Finding the Incredibles, and then Cars. Yeah, Cars got me into the fan fiction world. I just enjoyed the premise. That got me into the fan fiction world. My fan fiction account from that time does not exist anymore, but after I fell in with my current crew, it was a combination Cars and My Little Pony chat room, just some friends that Meredith had made in those two fandoms, and I was on the My Little Pony side of it, but I got Kinsey and Natty on the Cars side of things, and later found out that Kinsey and also Kelsey had in fact read my fan fictions way back in the day.
Yeah.
Which was really crazy because suddenly I realized that both my boyfriend and my best friend was some way connected.
Yeah. Hey, Kelsey she even had, like, there was this list on my fanfiction profile at the time that was a list of quotes from my fanfic, just memorable, notable quotes, I thought. And I erased everything on that profile several years ago, but Kelsey still had a copy of that list of quotes, and she sent them to me once. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I still want to take a look at that list later on.
Yeah, I'll try to find it. Yeah.
You were pretty good at making memorable quotes.
Oh, thank you. I feel like that's something I struggle with, so thank you. I feel like my dialogue is good, but like nothing really sticks out as a good one-liner. So I'm glad you think so. And that after Cars, well, Toy Story 3 gave me strong appreciation for the first two, and ever since then, Pixar has just been doing crazy stuff. As for Disney, outside of being Pixar's distributor, they were pretty much wallowing in obscurity at the time. In animation in that era, you either had the brilliance of Pixar or the futile hipness and edginess of DreamWorks and its imitators. So I don't remember exactly when it was that I became so obsessed with classic Disney. I remember looking forward to Princess and the Frog and Tangled in 2009 and 2010. They were like a big return to form, kind of. But I think it was a bit after that. Sometime after 2010, when I had a PlayStation Portable, and there was one solitary Kingdom Hearts title on that platform, the prequel, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. The first Kingdom Hearts game came out when I was a kid, and I'd seen a bit of it, but the series had kind of escaped my notice until I got the PSP. It took me a long time to process what a strange sort of crossover it was. And as I was playing Birth by Sleep, I researched Kingdom Hearts in general, and an interesting feature that every Kingdom Hearts game has, it's this journal, which upgrades itself every time you meet a new character, and it tells you where that character came from. And in the case of the Disney characters, it tells you their first film appearance and what year that film came out. And as just a huge sucker for trivia like that, I wanted to learn more about Disney and just going into it, and now I'm just the biggest fan of their films in general, not their business practices, nor the way they hamstring themselves by always having to make sure they project a Disney-esque image. And yeah, this obsession with all things Disney, especially as it relates to Kingdom Hearts, that's what gave rise to Keys and Kingdoms. And if I can remember that procedure, it's just the idea was I wanted to retell the Kingdom Hearts series because it's not told very well. The writing's not very good. The Disney content is not integrated very well. And so I wanted to retell it. I'm thinking maybe I tell it like super gritty, realistic comic book art, or like kind of on stage as a parody musical series with really good cosplay. And I thought, okay, what if I tell the story as if it abides by Dungeons and Dragons rules? And that concept was called Keys and Kingdoms, and it eventually evolved into just being a role-playing game that's a lot like Disney, and that became the Keys and Kingdoms that we talk about today. While my parody idea that operates under Keys and Kingdoms rules, I'm bringing back the parody aspects of that and calling it Kingdom Butts, and so we'll be writing that as a kind of a fanfic, I think. So that was the inspiration segment. You two still with me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Once we've exhausted the list of inspiring things, which I think I'll show you two in a moment, just off camera. I like media. There will be plenty of other things to talk about. I've chosen 3 things to talk about after the list is done, and then I'll just continue brainstorming. And all right, well, thank you for joining me for this little sit down today. What we're doing now, if we have the time, I hope. Natty has started introducing Kenzie and I to the Magnus archives. So we're gonna hang up this recording and we're gonna listen to a few episodes of that. So I'll catch you farmers later.
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 Gitty ya ya da da. Gitty ya ya hee. Mocha chocolate ya ya. Free of kitty marmalade. Do. Yeah, me again, on camera again. I'm gonna wrap up every podcast by talking about what's coming in the next episode. Firstly, between episodes 53 and 54, there are a couple of things I hope to wrap up, like a video about the best things Phase 1 had to offer. I'm getting the reading vlog started as soon as I can. Those 3 subjects I intended to tackle. Starting to edit and publish the Gargoyles retrospectives, which were recorded almost a year and a half ago. I'm really excited to finally get started on those babies. And I gotta clean up my DeviantArt account. It's gotten a bit sloppy. So next week's podcast episode, well, I shouldn't say next week. It's a reflex. It hasn't been weekly for a very, very long time, and I don't think it's going to start again now. But next episode, Natty and Kenzie will be my guests in the Team Salmon segment. They'll be joining me just as they just did to be the first proper human guest of that segment. I'll be resuming the fan fiction segment, starting to read the 5th book in my 6th book, Maximum Ride fanfic that I wrote when I was in college. And in inspirations, I'll be talking about Animorphs, which is something I haven't talked about much in a good long time, but I remember it well in pretty great detail. I've been thinking about it, and yeah, there's a lot that I recall. Can't wait. Hey, we'll see y'all next time. It will be a Tuesday at 7 p.m. That's a thing now. The podcast posts Tuesday at 7 p.m. no matter what. So not anywhere close to being every Tuesday at 7 p.m. So I'll catch you then. The seaweed is always greener in somebody else's lake. Noodle. Use your noodle. Noodle. Do the noodle dance. Tapas and Stuff Productions is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including Knight Sadie Allen.